You know, good concepts in TV shows and movies are rare. Rarer still are good executions of good concepts, but once in a while, a story with a fantastic premise comes along with the actual ability to deliver on the promise of that premise. The concept for Silo is simple. 10,000 people live in an underground silo. They've been doing so for at least 140 years, but likely much longer than that. The world outside is an uninhabitable post-apocalyptic wasteland. The Silo Society is a dystopian one run by a sort of totalitarian regime that would make George Orwell brim with excitement, where basic liberties such as the right to reproduce are only allowed with government permits. Anyone is however entitled to the right of leaving the silo if they choose to do so, with an important caveat.
If you boil the pact down to one rule, it's do not say you want to go outside, or you will fucking go outside.
If anyone does go outside, then a mysterious poison that may or may not be radiation will kill them in the span of 3 minutes. Is the outside world actually uninhabitable? How long have these people been living in the silo? What happened that drove mankind underground? These are the central questions that the story puts forward. Whether this show works or not hinges on how much intrigue these questions are able to generate. And well, you can certainly color me intrigued.
Well, gentlemen, you had my curiosity, but now you have my attention.
This show had me coming up with all kinds of theories after only being about 25 minutes into the first episode. It's the kind of show that can really take a sledgehammer to your sleep schedule, because much like the central character of the show, Juliet Nichols, we as viewers become consumed with finding out the answers to all of these questions. And so watching the next episode is much more appealing than going to sleep. Of course, voluntary sleep deprivation is a true mark of any good show worth binging. One of the most interesting aspects about Silo is its authoritarian society. I'm not sure if there's a name for it, but I imagine it would be something like judicial oligarchy, since the judicial arm of Silo's government holds a disproportionate amount of power, even superseding that of the mayor. One could classify the Silo society as an Orwellian one if the term Orwellian wasn't overused these days, but I digress. There are loads of obvious and not so obvious seedy ways that judicial uses to oppress and control the Silo's inhabitants.
I'm not the type of person they want having kids. They want docile, obedient people.
Using government-approved reproduction and mandated contraceptives to allow only breeding in the more docile of people. I'm not sure if being a sheep is a hereditary gene, but hey, points for creativity, I guess.
They stipulate that we can't mechanize the way we go up and down in the silo. No lifts, no pulleys.
Yeah.
Prohibiting the construction of elevators in an underground bunker with 140 floors. Limiting mobility is an ingenious way of oppressing your subterranean population. The disconnected populace is easier to control and rebellions are harder to organize, especially if moving between different floors requires climbing up thousands of stairs. I guess you could justify this as a public health measure to encourage exercise if not for nothing.
No magnification beyond a certain power.
Prohibiting the development of magnifying technology. I'm still not entirely sure what the objective of this one is, but I imagine it might be something to do with preventing technological development. Magnifying technology is likely necessary for technological growth. Keeping your scientists and engineers frozen in time probably makes it easier to control your population.
Get to my office, I have to walk through the cafeteria. So now, I go to work before dawn, and I come home after dark just so I don't have to see her body on that hill.
Placing a giant screen of a post-apocalyptic wasteland with the dead bodies of the last people that dared to leave the silo right in the middle of the cantina. A pretty direct warning to those that may be more surface-level inclined.
They have their own cameras. And they listen not just with Twitters and other people. They have devices. That's how they know everything.
Mass surveillance of every silo inhabitant through the use of hidden cameras behind mirrors. If only they had smartphones, these below-ground overlords would not need to be as sneaky about their surveillance.
This is a red-level relic, making it a threat to order in the silo.
And last and maybe least, prohibiting any relics from the past that may shed light on the outside world, namely what it was like before mankind lived underground. Since seducing pictures of clear blue oceans, sandy beaches, and lush green forests might lure these people out of their giant basement. As with any dystopian story worth telling, there are a lot of parallels to our present-day world that can be found. Mass surveillance is something most of us accept without much protest these days, which might make us ironically more docile than the inhabitants of the silo. Great difficulty in crafting an engaging science fiction story tends to come from the world building. Creating a captivating and absorbing world is no small feat, and Silo completely nails this. Something that comes from what I would call dripping exposition, or I guess just good writing in general. There are no exposition dumps in the early episodes. There's no forced classroom scene where kids are quizzed on history to let us, the audience, know everything that has happened up to this point. Instead, the exposition is more on a need-to-know basis. First, we learn about the cardinal rule of the silo regarding voicing your wishes of going outside. Then slowly but surely we are shown, instead of told, just how clueless the silo's inhabitants are about our planet in general. Whether it's characters being mortified with fear by a large body of water because no one born in the silo has ever seen more water than it takes to fill a bathtub. There's also the IT guy that hangs around in the cantina wondering about the lights in the sky at night.
So, when it's clear at night, there are these lights in the sky.
What are they?
I have no idea.
A fascinating scene that comes out of nowhere and perfectly displays the overwhelming ignorance that permeates the silo. These people, despite having decent technology, know as little about our universe as we did thousands of years ago. From a character development standpoint, there's a lot to enjoy here. Like any well-written story, the characters come across as three-dimensional, layered human beings. Holston and Alison Becker are the protagonists for the first 2 episodes only, and despite their short stint, they still manage to cast a presence that looms large and lingers throughout the entire season, long after they are out of the story. Writing-wise, it's no small feat to have characters with such little runtime make such a long-lasting impression so early in the story. Then there is Rebecca Ferguson of Mission Impossible fame, who plays the true protagonist of the story, Juliet Nichols. Juliet is decidedly not a traditional protagonist. She has a very standoffish attitude that makes her come across as quite unlikable. However, as the story progresses and her backstory is slowly revealed, we as viewers warm up to her character and fully accept her as our protagonist. What's interesting here is that my experience mirrored that of the characters in the silo. Everyone who meets Juliet initially finds her to be unlikable, but as they get to know her, they grow to like her, which is incidentally just how I felt as a viewer. Hollywood should take notes even if they won't, because this is actually how you write a strong female character. After all this incessant praise, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of awkward moments throughout the season that deserve mention, namely a few scenes where Juliet miraculously survives situations that would kill or seriously maim anyone, whether it's her hanging from a balcony as a bad guy tries to push her off or not push her off, or this scene where she jumps from one floor to another and just walks it off, or most egregiously and worst of all, this scene in the finale.
You serious?
These moments are unnecessary and ultimately take me out of the story because everything else feels so grounded in reality, at least as much as a post-apocalyptic sci-fi show can feel. Likely just a classic case of writers not trusting their audience to engage completely with their story without some forced action every once in a while. In conclusion, if you haven't seen Silo, you're missing out, especially if you like sci-fi. The fascinating mysteries, realistic characters, and political themes make for a pretty fantastic story to watch unfold. On a side note, is it me or is Apple TV quietly taking over the streaming service game?